Please join me and give a big round of applause for Ellie Greenwood.
100 miles is not that far, or so says Karl Meltzer, one of the most accomplished 100-mile runners in the world. And whilst it might not be if you've run that distance many times before, for me, as I stood at the start line in Squaw Valley, California, 160 kilometers seemed a very, very long way to go in just a pair of running shoes. Western States is one of the oldest and most highly regarded ultras in North America. It's been called the Boston Marathon of Ultras. Well, there's a little more altitude, a lot more hills, and despite the course profile, it does not seem downhill when you're running it. I had at most 30 hours to make it to the finish line, but not only did I have the anticipation of could I finish my first 100-miler, but a few people said I could win this thing. That would require me to run it in somewhere around 18 hours. That was about 5 hours more than I'd ever run before. The first miles were cruisy and easy, just as they should be. I was enjoying the scenery, the sunshine, and beautiful trails that I'd never been on before. But very soon, despite there being a few hundred runners in the race, I somehow ended up on my own, and my legs began to hurt. It was my calves, my quads, my hamstrings, pretty much everything. And at that point, I began to do what you should never do in any endurance event, and I began to think negatively and couldn't just focus on being in the moment. I couldn't help but think that I still had 110 kilometers to run, and there was no way my legs should be feeling this bad yet. The furthest I'd ever run before was 125K, so this wasn't just worrying. I was freaking out big time, and as many of my friends will not be surprised, I was getting a little grumpy. As I started into one of the canyon sections where you descend a series of dusty switchbacks down to the river, only to then have to hike back up and out again, an old guy in a lawn chair at the side of the trail said to me, "Enjoy this section, it's one of the most beautiful parts of the course." And I knew I had to get myself back into a positive mindset. So despite feeling awful, I forced myself to look up, open my eyes, and soak in the views. I actually said, "Wow, it's so pretty here." I was simply leapfrogging from one aid station to the next. As I'd leave one, I'd ask where the next one was. It was usually somewhere around 10K or an hour to go. And then I would count off the kilometers, one by one. This did seem a kind of crazy way to try and run 160 kilometers, but it was the only way I could keep myself moving. A little over 10 hours into the race, I saw my crew for the first time, and I was ecstatic to see them. Jackie and Anna were not ecstatic to see me vomit at their feet. But they did the best thing they could have done. They patched me up. Jackie handed me a bottle of water, a gel. She marched me out of the aid station and said, "See you in 10K. I kept on running because, well, I follow instructions. At 100K, I was joined by my friend Ryan, who could run with me for the final 60K. It was no exaggeration to say I'd look forward to this moment for the last 12 hours. I truly believe that a problem shared is a problem halved, and now I had a buddy to pep me up, to crack some really bad jokes, to to make me eat when I really didn't want to, and just to make me feel like I wasn't alone in this horrible, horrible mess. I was now in 6th place, half an hour back of the lead, and it hadn't been discussed, but we'd all given up any idea that I was going to win this thing. And it was the best thing that could have happened. I was now way more relaxed. The pressure of winning was gone. It was about salvaging this mess and having a somewhat respectable finish. And for the first time in many hours, I thought I might actually make it to the finish line. As I felt more positive, I would pick up the pace. And as I picked up the pace, I passed a few women. I'd feel a bit more positive, and so I thought I'd pick up the pace a little bit more. For the first time all day, despite my legs feeling shot, my stomach was still pretty queasy, I wasn't running, I was now racing. I was in 4th position, but I decided that 3rd would be kind of nice. I ran the final 16 kilometers solo, and with about an hour to go, Kristen literally yelled at me, "You're 3 minutes back of 2nd, 9 minutes back of 1st. I wasn't thinking about winning, but I was running like I was possessed. I just got it into my head. You need to run faster, you need to push harder, you need to go, you need to go. I'd kind of forgotten why. I'm not sure what happened in the next half hour, but by the time I made it to No Hands Bridge, some 3 miles to go till the finish, I'd somehow taken the lead. It was now dark. I was running scared, knowing I had ladies chasing me from behind. And well, it always adds the excitement to be running in the dark, on a trail you don't know, to have been on your feet for 17 hours, and then to have to chase a bear up a tree. Western States finishes on a high school track, and even in those final 400 meters, I didn't believe I was going to win. I just did what I'd been doing for the last few hours. I ran as fast as I possibly could. I truly believe that running 100 miles is a little bit like life itself. You can think you're prepared, you have the best laid out plan, but you don't really know what's going to happen. It definitely won't be plain sailing, but if you learn to roll with the punches, stay positive, and surround yourself with friends, it usually works out in the end.
Wow. Okay, I'm cheating again, Sean. I have 2 questions. You mentioned very casually about chasing a bear up a tree. Tell us more about that.
It was actually quite casual. It sounds strange. People think it's very exciting, but at this point I was very focused on getting to the finish line with people chasing me from behind. It was dark. You're running along the trail. You're wearing a headlamp. I had a handheld flashlight as well. And I saw this little kind of like reflections on the trail, and put my flashlight up, and there's this big hulk of a black bear on the trail. I lived in Banff at the time, and obviously I just thought, well, it's in the way, I need to get to finish, so I'll shout and I'll yell and whatever. And didn't really move too much. I mean, it registered I was there, and yeah, a guy came along as well, and then I must admit I did let him go on the same side of the trail as the bear. But yeah, we 2 of us yelling, chased it up a tree, and well, we carried on, yeah.
As you do. And then a question I was going to ask you originally was, with these really long distances, and I mean, you just described, I think really amazingly, the mental journey that you go through something like this, and obviously you get to some pretty dark points. Is there anything that you do to try and prepare for this in advance from a mental perspective?
I think it comes down to experience, and I totally learned, people said to me, when are you going to do your first 100 miler? And I said, when I'm ready. I don't think you're ever ready until you've done it, right? And you learn the mental aspects as you go along, and you learn that, I mean, they say in ultras, if you feel awful, don't worry, you'll feel good soon. If you feel good, don't worry, you'll feel awful soon. And it's that kind of thing of just like, yeah, focusing that you've got to carry on. And I must admit, I do a lot of solo training, and I think people think I'm crazy, but You know, if you live in Banff and I was going out running for like 4 hours in -20, you get fairly tough mentally, and that definitely helps. So yeah, just practice.
Cool. Let's give a big round of applause for Ellie Greenwood.